Kind of segueing from the traditional game-based education literature, battle of the books. We went from like, hey, all our kids should read, love literature, to the point where, oh, we should have competitions. Like, we should have battle of the books. Now we should compete. Like, the kids that love reading, we should give them a place for them to like have a platform to compete. And I thought, well, yeah, here's our scholar gamer piece. We have kids that are good at gaming and now need to do something with it beyond their traditional ability to just do it.
I'm excited to introduce you to XSense, an innovative company providing home safety products. Many long-term listeners here at Shifting Schools know that my wife and I also have another business outside of education and Shifting Schools, and that's in real estate, where we flip homes and have rental properties and an Airbnb, because who doesn't these days? So when it comes to safety in homes around things like smoke alarms and CO2 detectors, it's something that we take very seriously, just like you. We want to protect our assets, our home, and our family. XSense smart technology allows you to monitor your home even when you are not there. Smoke alarms are one of those things we don't think often about. We once had a situation where our smoke alarms were going off in our house when we weren't home, and guess what? We had no idea they were going off. Luckily, we had great neighbors who heard the alarm, came over to the house and looked in the windows and didn't see any smoke, so called us to tell us the alarms were going off. We got lucky as it was just a malfunction in our smoke alarm system. But the problem we had was we had no idea the alarm was even going off. That is where XSense smart technology comes in. With easy to install devices and smart technology, you'll have peace of mind knowing that XSense is always on guard and you will have access to your home even when you're away. Of course, the smoke and CO2 detectors are great for keeping you and your family safe. But the product I'm most excited about is the water leak detector. Nothing can ruin your home faster than water. And I would love to share a firsthand story with you, but there are too many to pick from. Let's just say I have stories. Too many, in fact. These simple little devices just sit anywhere you might have a water leak. Under your sink, in the bathroom, or the number one place that water leaks happen. You guessed it, the water line to your fridge for the ice maker. Get the peace of mind that if nobody is home and you do have a leak, you'll be notified instantly and can take action to turn it off before it ruins your house. Here's a pro tip for you. Anytime we have someone watching our cats when we're on vacation, we always show them, remind them, and have labeled the water shut off to the house. I hope you've done the same. XSense allows you to make simple little upgrades to your home this summer to make it safer for you, your family, and protect your biggest asset, your home. You're going to want to check out XSense during July and during Amazon Prime Day when they will be offering big discounts on their products. I've already bookmarked their Amazon page to be first in line for these new smart products and some of those water leak devices. To learn more, visit x-sense.com or search for x-sense, that's x-sense in Amazon today. XSense, keep you and your loved ones safe 24/7. All right, welcome back to the Shifting Schools podcast. I'm so excited to continue with our mini series here on esports, and what started as a mini series of 4 to 5 episodes has gotten larger and larger thanks to people like Dr. Harvey, who, when we reached out and say, hey, would you like to come on and talk about esports in your classroom and in your school? Everybody has stepped up and said, absolutely, let's have a conversation. So Dr. Harvey, thank you for being here on the podcast today. I want to get our conversation started with over on your blog. You share the step-by-step process you use for taking a game, Final Fantasy VII, and using it as a text in your 8th grade class. Maybe talk about your students' reactions and how did you set this up and your students' reaction to actually reading a game as part of their 8th grade class.
Hey, first off, thanks for having me on here. This is a great opportunity. Since we're talking about gaming today, and there's going to be a lot of what do you mean you use that, or how do you use that? I think the first thing is to keep an open mind, about how we bring games into the classroom and what does that mean for literacy in large and education. But It's really centered around what students are looking for. It's
Mm.
2023. Kids are looking for new ways to learn language arts. And, if Shakespeare was around today, he'd probably be using video games and VR and augmented reality to display some of these great ideas. And so, with that being said, Final Fantasy or any of these great AAA title games are right up there with the best books being created. And so,
Ooh, I love that.
yeah, I tried to bring back some timeless universal themes by bringing in games, and I understand iambic pentameter and Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet are great, but there are other ways to get across these literacy concepts to kids who, to be honest, are not looking to be measuring the meter and rhyme scheme of, your average 5-act play, especially when they're, interested in TikTok filters and the new age of what's happening. Now, again, if Shakespeare was around today, he'd probably be using TikTok. But that's for another discussion for another, guest. We're talking about games today, and bringing in the popular games of the now is what's going to get kids to build a relationship with reading and learning and listening and speaking and writing. And so, back when I was working in my graduate degree, we're always trying to figure out how to get kids to read. I thought, well,
Yeah.
how do we build a relationship with narratives? And we got to get kids to enjoy the experience. And what better experience than having the agency of playing the story? And so that's where gaming came in. I thought, well, there's plenty of games that have the narrative pieces in it that we actually get to control. And, for every game I've ever brought into the classroom, like, kids they want to adjust their avatar. They want to customize that character. And I don't think in any book that I ever read, the first 4 pages were, do you want the player to have a mustache? Do you want to change their hair? And no matter what
So
game
true.
we've ever played, even Fortnite, kids are like, I want to customize my character first. And, half the time, I'm like, we don't have time for this. But I realize even in a normal traditional static text, there is not any time, there's no place for it. And so bringing in games was really a culturally responsive approach to building a relationship with reading and literacy for my kids. Because when I do bring in traditional literature later in the year or whatever, they go, oh, this is just like such and such in the game we played. I go, yeah, character development sheets, archetypes,
Yeah.
plots, all those things. So I think, like for any good language arts teacher, you might say, well, why are we reading this book? Why are we playing this game? Why are we
Right.
watching this movie? And it's not just because the actors are good or the CGI is great or, oh, it's such a great author. It's because the content of the novel or that movie or in that game is relative to the curriculum that we're learning about. So in Final Fantasy VII, we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about politics, we're talking about the hero's journey. And through that experience, I get to teach a lot of the things that might last 5 weeks in a traditional novel unit.
I love that. And, one of the things that we keep touching on throughout this mini series is really what we're doing here is inviting student culture into our classrooms. And can you talk about what is that like? Are you seeing, are all kids into it? Or is this much like, I don't know, anything else we do where you have about a third of the kids that this literally hits them? A third of the kids are like, yeah, I'll do it because the teacher told me to do it. And the third of kids, it doesn't matter. This isn't their thing. They'd rather be doing something else. Or are you finding that when we invite something that is this, I would almost say ingrained in a generation around playing games, whether it's that exact game? I mean, these kids have been playing games on phones or on consoles their entire life. Are you seeing more engagement from your kids around, or when you bring in these kind of esports games or these games into your ELA classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a little easier of a sell to include something with its popularity. I would argue it's harder to fight your kids to introduce a novel, a traditional novel. You come in, you go, hey, what are these books doing on the table? And they're like, oh, wait, whoa, are we going to be? And I'm like, yeah, we're reading this book for the next 5. They're like, oh, man. Now, most kids can read pretty decent, and I would say that the level of literacy when it comes to gaming varies. We all might be familiar with games.
Sure.
But I try and choose games that are easy to play, but you get a lot out of
Mm,
it. And I think a lot of us have to figure that out with books too. So I do think it's a selling point, right? Like, how much do we have to fight to get our kids to learn? How hard is it to make our kids enjoy our vegetables, right? And so I try and think games are the sneaky way of getting the vegetables in. Now, traditionally, I think it's
right.
very difficult to try and sell a kid, and I'm not saying it's hard to sell kids on books. I'm just saying, like, when you're comparing it to games, the buy-in is much
Right.
higher, right? And
Right.
that was my traditional background. Was I went to college, you took classes on, um, books for young adults, and we took classes where it was supposed to teach us grammar. And
Right.
I now wonder, when you're going to the College of Education, why you don't take a coding for educators class, why you don't have a video games for young adult literature class. Like, there are things we're kind of missing that are
Yeah.
supposed to be preparing us for the generation of the now. The average age of a teacher in this country is 42. The average age of a
Mm,
gamer is 35. So we're reaching this intersection point where you would say, oh, yeah, like, everybody knows how to game. Everybody understands some of those basics. And we're not talking about Tetris anymore, which, by the way, a
right.
great movie is going to be coming out about that soon. But we're definitely trying to figure out, how do we get our kids to build a relationship with literacy? And yes, I think it's hard to sell kids on anything, but that's what a good educator does. They are able to zest up something and deconstruct it in a way that students find a lot of worth to. And I think sometimes,
Mm,
we get to that point in a book, and you get everybody reading, it's whole group reading, everyone has their book, and it's week 2 or 3, and they're actually reading and they're into it. And you're like, yes, like, see, if you just gave it a little bit of time, and a good,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, good teacher's like,
That's
gotcha, I got you. I knew you'd like this. And for a game, I really don't have to try that hard. I think I've taught about 13 video games as novels, and
okay.
treated it like this whole unit with all these things, essays, research, whatever. Um, and it's less of a fight.
And that's great.
Yeah,
To
I'm
your
not, I'm
point.
not, I'm
This
not,
is
yeah.
less of a fight.
I don't ever, there are struggles. I always tell my kids, if I wanted to, pull teeth, I would have been a dentist. So I think sometimes you turn on the game, just like sometimes it's easy to play a movie. And, a film
Yeah.
as literature class is great. The teacher goes, let's pause it real quick. And everyone's like, no, no, no. And I'm like, I know, this is just like the end of a chapter in a book. We're going to stop right here and let's talk about a few things, because I
Mm,
never met any author of a book who went, and for chapter 7, here are the questions I wrote to ask your class. Like, they wrote the
yeah.
book, and it's the teacher's job to come up with these questions, these assignments. See, no one ever made a video game and said, now that you're done with level 7, ask your class the following things. And Steven
Mm.
Spielberg didn't go, and here are my questions that go with this movie. It's like, we have to find, as a teacher, like, where our part comes into it. And I think for games, I think it's tricky for teachers. They go, well, I wasn't
Yeah.
trained on to call a timeout here. And I argue, though, right away, just saying, yes, you were. This is a literary medium just like anything else, and you are already trained to do and make and design things that go with this. Like, you're a chef. You've used ingredients before. If you don't know how to cut an onion, you'll be all right here. Like, so here's some tips.
I love that. And just to remind everyone, we will put a link to the step-by-step process that Dr. Harvey used with Final Fantasy VII over there on his blog. You have a ton of stuff, a ton of resources, and thank you for sharing all of those. And you have a portfolio of over a dozen pieces of research looking into esports and gaming, and we'll make sure to link to that in the show notes as well. But what does being a scholar gamer mean to you? And why do you think we need even more scholar gamers doing research in the future? What's that mean?
Kind of segueing from the traditional game-based education literature, battle of the books. We went from, like, hey, all our kids should read, love literature, to the point where, oh, we should have competitions. Like, we should have battle of the
Mm,
books. Now we should compete. Like, the kids that love reading, we should give them a place for them to, like, have a platform to compete. And I thought, well, yeah, here's our scholar gamer piece. we have kids that are good at gaming and now need to do something with it beyond their traditional ability to just do it.
Right.
And I think that's tricky. I I think a lot of educators want to know what's next for that kiddo that's really good at something. And so there's a lot of skills embedded naturally into gaming. And the trendy word is to call them scholar gamers, people who are doing more with the game than just having fun. And
Right.
just as much as you might say for the person who's an avid reader, what are we doing with it now? It looks like you're reading a lot, right? But what are you doing with it? What are you doing with all this knowledge that you're getting? I call it XP. Like you're getting experience points in gaming. John Dewey
Right.
would call it experiential learning, right? And I really think they're the same thing. I think if John Dewey was around today, he'd be like, "Oh, the XP is in gaming," right? Just as much as
Yeah.
the time reading a book is supposed to be equivocal to some type of thing or something we do with it summatively or formatively or like something like what is
Mm.
it? So the scholar gamer piece is saying, hey, let's honor the experience, the XP in this gaming, and let's make it mean something. What are they going to do with it? Is it STEM to STEAM?
Mm.
Are they creating stuff? Are they making content? They're not just consumers of the medium. They are now being content creators of the medium. They are using it to make stuff. They are not just watching and playing. They are now doing and designing. And I think that's a really fun agency based approach to what we call scholar gaming, is that we're not just enjoying this, like we're actually benefiting from it.
I like that. And I like this idea that you're building these skills. What are you going to do with these skills? In playing games or going through being a scholar gamer, you are building skills, much like you said. I love that analogy, right? When we read books, we're gaining knowledge, and you can have all the knowledge, but if you're not applying it in some way, if you're not taking that knowledge and doing something with it, could you even consider yourself a knowledgeable person? I think that's I really like that. I think that's such a great,
I
just a
Yeah,
great way to be thinking about
we
it.
in the back in the day, like let's say hundreds of years ago, we would make fun of someone who go, all they do is just read. They don't go
Yeah, so
outside.
true.
They don't do anything. Like we would, just as much as the stereotypical, like all you do is game, man. All you do is you just
Yeah.
game. Like all you do is just watch games and play games. We would say, well, what are you doing with it? And so
Yeah.
I think now we wouldn't say that about someone who reads books, because maybe that are that isn't maybe as popular, but we would certainly still think the same as to someone who just goes into the room or goes to a park to read. We go, well, I want to know what you're thinking. What are you doing with it? And it would be very
Yeah.
valuable, right? We go, wow, I'd love to actually ask you some questions and make some
Yeah.
content. And the same thing is happening for kiddos gaming, except I think it's marginalized. I think, and I'll say an unpopular opinion here, I think video games are the best babysitter for parents at times. They buy this thing and then it takes care of their kid at times. I
Right.
argue there's not a lot of there's no back and forth. There's no, hey, what'd you do in the game today, or how'd that go, or like, can you tell me about your
Right.
Legend of Zelda experience today? Like, how did you build up your character, or who are the antagonists? I think a lot of times, like, well, here's the game you wanted, go ahead, and it's not, hey, over dinner, like I saw you were playing in a new level, or what's that all about? And I think that's the
Yeah.
same as if you sent your kid into the room or into a park and you say, hey, what'd you read today? I think they would love
Yeah.
to tell you. So being a scholar gamer means being or having somebody entertain the thought that you're doing something beyond entertaining yourself. And that means that you're
Mm.
doing something. And so we got to ask those gamers, what are you doing? What are you making? What do you think? Because I think some of the stuff they're doing is quite honestly more sophisticated and challenging than what we see in traditional schools right now.
Ooh. Talk about that a little bit, will you? What do you mean by that? Some of the stuff they're doing is more sophisticated than what we see happening in schools right now.
I think some of the, like, let me go back into time. When I was in middle school, I had to remember and memorize a periodic table of elements, which at the
Right.
time seemed ridiculous. I was like, how am I going to remember what beryllium is? Like, why? And how am I supposed to know that? And the acronym for iron is SF, or what does that mean? And I remember the Santa Fe Railroad, and I remember iron, and I had to use these like tricks. But I can remember like 250 different Pokemon. And I can remember what's a water, what's a fire, what's an earth. I know their weakness. I know their HP level. I know their special ability. I am like, how did I learn this stuff? Oh, that one's rare. That's the Team Rocket. That's the holographic. That one has. And I'm like, if I would have just learned the elements. And I think like games have this way of doing things to teach us without us not even realizing it. And so I don't know how many games have really tapped into this. There's this, argument between what's game-based learning and what's edutainment. And there is a big difference, right? One is like, you don't realize there's onions in it. And the other is like, yeah, that's onions. Ugh. No, sorry to the listeners who like onions. I happen to not. And so I use that analogy a lot. But the reality is games can teach us these sophisticated things by just experience. And, I happen to really like Pokemon. I don't even remember how to play the game with cards, but I remember the culture of Pokemon. And there's many other things like that. That's just a card-based game. Now, when we're talking about, let's just say Skyrim, a very popular open world game, there are thousands of stories that you can read in Skyrim that amount to hundreds of thousands of pages worth of just, I'm going to go into this virtual world. Back then, we wouldn't call it the metaverse, but, you could be in the world of Skyrim, go into a world, open up a book, read a book in a virtual world, and you'd catch your kid, like, what are you doing in there? And you're like, I'm just reading. You're like, you're playing the game. You're like, no, I'm reading in the game. You're like, oh, this is pretty, okay. So, and they're, classic stories. So that's just like a tangential thing there. But, I go back to James G. He, a popular guy in the field of game-based learning and literacy. And I remember him talking about this game that I never played, Civilization, very popular game. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of commands, quite complicated. And, it takes a little bit of effort to get it going. But once you do, you start to feel like you have the ability to get into it. And such is the same for anything. And I think you need a little bit of knowledge to get chemistry going. But it's hard to initially develop that fundamental set of skills that make you go, all right, bring on more test tubes and chemicals. Now I'm ready. Triple beam, balance, pipettes, get the Bunsen burners. Let's go, And without that language at first, it's hard to really get it going. So I say in games, which are like so complex in the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people making any one single game. Games make more than the movie industry. They make more than the book industry. And they take teams of people who might honestly make a Pearson or McGraw textbook look like child's play to make this one 70-hour experience happen. So, what happens to the person who plays it? I think a lot, psychologically is changing in their brain as a result of them participating in that experience willingly. They're going into this challenge being defeated, coming back into it, wanting to try again. And I think about these games that have recently been so difficult, but yet I go, how do you want to play whatever game, but then you don't want to go to math the next day?
Right.
I'm like, math seems a little bit easier than playing on extra hard mode on the, but there's this phenomena there. So when I talk about the sophistication of games, it's not just the medium itself, but it's the user, it's the UI, it's the medium and the user, and they interact together so well. Sometimes it's like Velcro. They're just waiting to connect with each other, and they're hard to separate.
I like that. It's very rare that I get to talk to somebody who's an educator and also a gamer. You are a Rocket League national champion player. Congrats on that. And from the player's perspective, what are some of the benefits that you see? I mean, I love your passion around this. I can tell, you've done a lot of work and work with your kiddos around this stuff. And you have this perspective that I don't think a lot of educators have, which is actually being a national champion player and experiencing these games in much the same way that many of our students do today. So from your perspective, what are some of the benefits that of being a gamer yourself that have either helped you in your career, have helped others maybe that you've played with in their own paths and careers, that you're able then to take when you're doing this stuff with your kids in your classroom?
Oh, that's a great question. It started off with, hey, we had a gaming club and the kids kept playing
Mm.
games, with each other. One kid's like, when do we get to play another school? And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. So 4 years ago, I was like, I guess we could go to the other 27 middle schools in Albuquerque and ask if there's anyone else like us. And lo and behold, oh my gosh, it was like striking oil. Of course, there are other kids at other schools who would love to compete in a game against it. And it just blew up right there. And I was at the point where, I had, some gaming literacy and I like gaming, but I wasn't a competitive gamer. And I always had the stereotype I had to be playing Halo and be eating Cheetos and I don't know. It was something, it was different.
With your hoodie up and you just had to do the whole thing. Yeah.
I was like, wait a second. The scholar gamer approach here is that we could deconstruct this and make this an educational experience. So I started with a very popular game, Rocket League, that was, E for everyone, very general based. It's cars playing soccer and you control the car, and it's very three-dimensional physics based. It's like calculus with gaming. Kids don't know, right? You're tricked into wow,
right.
This quadratic plane is 3D, and now it's so amazing to watch kids fall in love with something that is completely relative to so many other fields. So that's another story in itself. But starting off coaching a team that I hadn't even I didn't even played the game myself, but a lot of kids had, right? And that's what we have to start as teachers. Sometimes we have to honor the things our kids bring to us. So I started playing Rocket League 4 years ago. And I tell you, it was freaking hard. And I think the kids really appreciated the fact that I wanted to play and not just honor what they were doing. Oh, well, you all go have a good time, and I think it's okay, so you go do it. They're like, why don't you play? And I'm like, that's a good idea. Let me start playing. And, at my school, there are 3 levels. There's a beginner league. There's I think I'm getting it league. And then there's I'm good and I want to compete league. And so, over the years, I slowly was getting to be better and better. And, at this point, I've put about 1,500 hours into Rocket League. I think when the game kind of calculated that, that's about 45 or so days worth of playing, in a game, 45 days in a match, and over 4 years. So I'm thinking of some famous 10,000 hour rule, not Malcolm Gladwell who made it popular, but just the whole idea of that was, I'm far from actually becoming an expert, but in the league where other teachers and other educators are using this, I was able to compete myself and say, hey, I'm willing to put in the hours. After I finished my PhD, I was like, all right, well, I got nothing to do. Let's grind in the game. I was so happy to step away from writing hundreds of pages a year and start putting it into, the game. And my kids appreciated that. When they're asking how to do something, I didn't send them to page 75 of some manual or some YouTube video. I was working with them eventually and then showing them. And that is such an empowering skill or feeling, is to acquire something your kids are doing and then to be able to then show them eventually. Because at first I got to see it as a learner. I was flopping around like a fish on land at first. And it's such a good feeling to go back to that and go, I actually know what that was like. Versus I'm just as clueless as you. You can actually, show some growth. And back then it was cool because your students could see that you were growing with them. Now they're like, man, you're good. How do you do that? And there's no you don't understand. I used to be horrible.
Yeah. I put 45 days in. That's how I'm able to do that.
Now go home and do 20 minutes of reading, please. A day. They'll go home and play NBA 2K for an hour and a half, and then I ask them, hey, did you do your math in so-and-so's class? Go, no, I can't believe they assign me math homework every day. And I go, your math teacher can't believe that you play NBA 2K for an hour and a half every day. Doesn't that seem a little off here? So there is some relativity there. I think becoming a national champion was partaking in something that I was also honoring for my students. And I happen to love
I
it.
love
It's
that.
not like I was doing
Sure.
something I didn't like, but I think that's where it starts. I didn't know that I'd like Rocket League, and I had to try it
Mm,
first. It wasn't like, man, you guys look like you're having so much fun. I wish I could. I totally had the ability to partake in it. It's just,
yeah.
did I? So,
That's awesome. That's awesome. What are some of the other skills? I know you said so maybe talk a little bit about your school. You said your school kind of has three separate, I don't know, you'd almost call them, what'd you call them? Three separate clubs, like beginners kind of getting good, and then those ready to go out in competition.
yeah,
How does that, or is this at a middle school or middle school, high school
it's
combined?
the
What does
middle
this look
school.
like?
Like me and a couple other coaches designed this conference, the Western Regional Middle School Esports Conference, free conference for
Okay.
esports, California to New Mexico and up. And we thought, we should give kids a skill-based place to play. There's another national league where you play and you might play against another team and they're just super good and they destroy you. It just reminded
Right.
me when I was a kid in fourth grade. Bless you, Miss Agri, but she would call. Every time I went up on the math board, and there was this math contest, and I still remember the stupid line drawn on the chalkboard, and she'd call up another student who was always so goated at math, like it was just so unfair, and I would get destroyed. And it made me not even like math. Not even I was like super
Right.
good, but like this isn't even fun to try. And in
Yeah.
esports, it's not fun to get your butt beat that bad. No,
Slaughtered.
yeah, you don't want to like it. So we designed a conference where it was skill based. And so there are thresholds in Rocket League, for example, you play competitively and you get a rank like bronze, silver, gold, so on and so forth. And so you naturally have this formative assessment embedded into the game that kids actually try their hardest to show how good they are, unlike the tests we
Mm,
give our kids 3 times a year that are like they're not happy about. Kids can't wait to
right.
try their best to actually show in the game, another phenomena, really how much learning and growth they've shown. And so
You've done. Yeah.
for sure, we tried to make this something where the beginners got to play the beginners. And it's really fun to watch beginners play beginners. And there's a lot of natural, I would say almost call it zeal. You get to see this special level of competition where then you go to the highest level. These kids have no ceiling. The skill cap is unlimited and they get to put it all out there. And I think it's really appropriate that in school, I know we don't always follow this model, but grades are one thing, but your ability is another. And if we put
Mm,
students like with other students who at the same level of ability, I think we'd see a much different outcome. Now, mind you, in my program, let's say we have 15 kids, a few ladies, majority male, unfortunately. It's not quite unique, but all grade levels, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So on my varsity team, we have a sixth grader and a couple eighth graders. And at the
mm.
lowest level, we still see eighth graders and sixth graders and guys and girls, and they're all at the computer playing. And they're like, wait, what team is this? Is this wait, is this the eighth grade? I'm like, we don't have eighth grade teams. Like, is this the
Uh,
how, I go, it's all ability. So you could be
it's
really,
ability level.
yeah. And I really don't, I think it's intimidating and it really disrupts the current model of the way we do things. But that is, in my opinion, a very appropriate approach is to
Mm,
let us go with the learner, right? And sometimes they
mm.
excel, and I push them up. I don't think too many people regress. We might hold people back from going forward, but I don't. It's very rare that we go. We actually put you too far ahead. Let's take you back a grade. Like I've never seen that. We always just hold them at
Yeah.
the level they're at. So if there's anything to get from this gaming esports thing, it's that we got to go at the pace of our learners, whether they're gamers or
Mm.
readers.
I love that. I love that. Well, as we get ready to wind this up, if educators wanted to get started and they're listening to this podcast and they're saying, I'm an ELA teacher, I love this idea about bringing the story of games in to get kids interested in reading. Of course, we're going to point them to your blog and all of your amazing resources that you've given away. Thank you for that. Where else should they reach out to connect with you, or other places that they can go to get resources around some of these ideas?
This is a very cliche thing, but I say ask your kiddos. I say,
Okay.
they're very good.
Good start.
Yeah, the good start. A lot of times you say, hey, what games should we do in esports? They go Call of Duty, and I go, well, hold on, we can't do that. That's a little too graphic, but it's a good place to
Yeah.
start. So I always say student first. But then, I would go to some of the websites that are doing some great things. Games for Change. They have a great conference. They're always doing things about the positivity and empathy centered around games. Good places like NASEF. It's a network of gamers and scholars that are helping people bring esports and gaming together in education. And, I would say just a good research through Google and YouTube will find some gems. And that's how it started a decade ago for me when I did, this stuff for my master's was like, where's the content? And I know people are already kind of doing this, and it was fun to kind of find my own primary sources. I know everyone's always looking for them, but I also say with the handful of suggestions, go find some yourself and take ownership of that search instead of just taking what other people have to say for you.
Yeah, I love that. And we interviewed Gerald, who's the CEO and founder of NASEF. So that's also
he's
in this
down the road
so
from me in Santa Fe.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So it's also on this mini series as well. So yeah, we've got some great things going on here. Well, Dr. Harvey, thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to learn more about you, follow the work that you're doing with kids, where's the best place for them to reach out and follow you?
Well, I have a LinkedIn. You can find me at Miles Harvey. You can also look up milesoflearning.com as a website. And then my YouTube channel, Miles Harvey, also has probably 300 videos. Lots of cool stuff you can look at. So those are 3 great places to start finding free stuff. And if you ever want the academic, the juicy, the dense things, you can go to Miles Harvey on Google Scholar and look up any of my 13 publications and 2 books.
Ooh, well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you just got home from work, so I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. But thank you so much for being part of the Shifting Schools podcast and part of this mini series on games, and continue to in bringing student culture into our classrooms. And I think esports and gaming is such a great way to do that. So Dr. Harvey, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
You got it. Game on, learn on.
I want to spotlight a game changer. Meet Digon Esports, a trailblazer in transforming student engagement, armed with a combined 30 years of attending, supplying, and working with over 500 international schools in 60 plus countries. Digon is poised to usher esports into your campus. Digon's roots run deep in the international school community. Founded by 2 former international school students and passionate gamers, Elia and Jonas, Digon was born from firsthand experience. They partnered with the 2 former founders of an international school's activity management solution to supercharge their vision with decades of experience working with international schools. Stay tuned to hear more about Elliot's captivating journey in an upcoming episode of our esports mini-series. Digon's mission is clear. Align with your students' passions and use it as a stepping stone to cultivate creativity, problem solving, global citizenship, collaboration, and communication. Critical 21st century skills championed by the World Economic Forum's Education 4.0 plan. An added cherry on top, boosting self-esteem and providing an inclusive space for students to shine. Safety and structure are Digon's key ingredients. They've tailored a competitive, educational, and entertaining approach within a closed, secure network exclusive to international schools. Think your school is ripe for an esports club? Digon's Esports Gaming After School Club is a treasure trove of gaming activities promoting interactivity, non-competitive play while imparting valuable life skills. Ready to go pro? Digon's all-in-one platform simplifies esports league participation, student management, match scheduling, and game day participation. This comprehensive platform is committed to offering the best esports experience, continually expanding its reach in games, age groups, and leagues in regions. International school listeners, if you envision an esports program in your school, the path starts at Digon. Visit digonesports.com and book a free call to explore how Digon can champion your esports venture. That's Digon Esports, Daigon esports.com. We extend a hearty thank you to Digon for sponsoring this esports miniseries here at Shifting Schools. I also wanted to take a moment to remind you of our 3-month generative AI cohort we have starting this August. Generative AI tools like ChatGPT are changing the educational landscape, and we know our listeners are eager to take their teaching practice to the next level. That's why you listen to podcasts, to learn and be a better teacher. And that's why Tricia and I created the 3-month generative AI cohort. Now here's what you get. From August to October, for 3 months, we're inviting you to embark on a transformative journey with our 3-month generative AI cohort. Immerse yourself in a world of AI-powered education, unravel its wonders, and unleash its potential right in your classroom. We will be holding a monthly live webinar that will be tailored to your unique questions and needs, providing live interactions that support you and your learning journey. Each month, you'll receive a generative AI resource ready to implement in your teaching, pushing the boundaries of traditional methods and engaging students in the learning process while building skills they will need for the future of work. We will keep you updated with the latest news and development in the AI landscape, plus share a curated list of new innovative AI tools to keep you at the forefront of educational technology. Our goal is to geek out on AI so you don't have to. Explore new and time-saving integrations with our monthly AI-powered prompts designed to spark innovation and invite experimentation with your students in the classroom. And of course, you will be able to connect, collaborate, and share what you are trying and how it's going with your cohort peers, and have unlimited access to Tricia and I through our dedicated Slack space. But here's the catch. We are limiting this cohort to just 50 participants. This is to ensure that we can meet individual needs and offer personalized learning experiences to every one of our members. So don't delay. You're going to want to be a part of this cohort. Enroll today and ride the wave of AI-powered education with Shifting Schools. All you have to do to register is go to shiftingschools.com to secure your spot. And remember, all podcast listeners can save $25 by using the code SSPOD25 at checkout. That's SSPOD, SSPOD 25 at checkout.